IFC as well. We also have Abigail Welbeck from Ashesi University, who will be joining us shortly. We have the honor of the Pro Vice Chancellor of Accra Technical University, who will be chairing this occasion. So as I welcome you all, I would also welcome the Pro Vice Chancellor to give us our welcome address. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Good morning. Good morning. How is the morning? Very cool. Okay, thank God. Miss Jamila, I just can't pronounce the second name. The third name is difficult for me. And then we have our representative here, Dr. Peter, and then Mrs. Abigail Welbeck. You are all welcome. Please, are you here? Can we identify you? The people I've mentioned. Abigail is coming. Then you have Peter here. Peter was with us yesterday. And then you have the IFC country representative. That is Miss Jamila. I'm right. Thank you very much. That's the difficult part. Now let's come to us. Please, let's identify ourselves as deans so that the people can recognize us. Deans here, can you please just stand up so that we can recognize you quickly? And then we have Dean of Faculty of Business, Dean of Faculty of Built Environment, Dean of Student, Dean of International Programs. Please, Director, please get up. Let's acknowledge you. We have Director of Business Development, and then we have the Director of Research, and then we have Director of Industrial Liaison, and then we have a few HODs here. Please kindly stand up. Let's greet you. We have HOD from Electrical Department, HOD from Mechanical, and HOD from Purchasing and Supply. This is the team from Accra Technical University. Kindly sit down. Thank you very much. You are welcome. I think when we take Accra Technical University out, we don't have many people here. So you do well to introduce everybody to us. But I know you. At least you are from CTVET and a big director who have been worrying us more. So you are welcome. It's good to see you once again. For some reason, the Vice Chancellor is not here. And as the Deputy Vice Chancellor, I will do just justice to his speech quickly. It's with great pleasure that I would like to welcome you all to Accra Technical University this morning, and especially to this event that we are coming to look at a deeper collaborative approach between industry and academia. This morning, before coming on my way, one thing I decided to check is the rate of unemployment in Ghana. I just decided to check, and you are amazed at the figures. I saw that in 2020, it was 4.65. You know, unemployment has to do with the rate of qualified, people who are not yet working. So we are not even talking of people who are not qualified. We are talking of the mass of people who are qualified, yet they have not found themselves in any, employment. 4.65, it looks high in 2020. Then I was inquisitive to look at 2021, and I saw that it has increased a little, 4.70. Then I decided to check in 2022. Somebody would tell me 2022 is not yet over. But they show me statistics for 2022, second quarter. And I tell you, it was 13.9. 13.9. So you begin to ask yourself what is happening in Ghana. So this raised a lot of questions. If you are here, many universities are coming out. We are bringing new programs. We are producing qualified, graduates on the market. And then these graduates do not find themselves employed. Then there is a problem. Because on the other hand, if you check very well what is happening, the need for employment is there. Every day when you wake up and you eat, every day you move your car. Maybe your car may get a fault. You need a repairer. Maybe you need a new building. People are building. The building industry is really increasing in Ghana. And people are eating. So every day we live, and we live differently. The dynamism in life tells that there is a need for employment. The job is available. But why is it that we keep producing a lot of people? If you check even our our rate of graduates on yearly basis. We produce more graduates year in, year out. And again, when you look at the general figure, we are not performing well in terms of employment. It tells you that there is a scale gap. There is a huge gap between the industry and then the academia. Perhaps the people we are producing do not fit the job requirement on the market. Perhaps. I do not know if that's really the case. There could be many factors. Or perhaps we don't produce people in the real sectors of the economy where they need to be employed. But I think this raises a lot of concern, and that we need to think about. And I will attribute the recent, increase from 4.70 to 13.9, perhaps to the advent of COVID-19 that brought different dynamism. Because all over, we were having the same trend, 465, 470, sometimes comes a bit lower, then suddenly we've increased up to 13.9. It tells you that maybe because of the COVID-19, many of the skills, people were laid off, a lot of skills were no more needed, things had turned digital, people mentioned fourth revolution, industrial revolution, and so many different things that have changed the dynamism in the world market. But have we also changed in academia? Is it our fault? Is it only our fault? Perhaps the industry has a role to play. We don't train the people on our own just for ourselves, because after we train them, they are supposed to be employed in the industry. So the industry has to also participate in training and bringing up these students. So I have a few points I put down here, and I say that we may be looking at lack of adequate skills and competencies required on a job, or perhaps lack of alignment, you understand, between university need and the industry required skills. We may also be looking at the 5 changing skill requirements brought by the COVID-19. All these are dimensions we need to explore. And then we need to look at the lack of industry involvement. I say this because in other parts of the world, the industry, we don't go after them, they go after us. Because they know the product, they want to even take the best product. I tell you, I visited a university in Paris, and before the people could graduate, you have a list of employees who have already made requests. They want the person in this, in that, in that. And they are fighting for the people to quickly finish so that even they can give employment in advance. For the people not to have a change of mind. But here is the other way. The industry is on its own, academia is on its own, and one is pursuing the other, and we don't really know how we bridge the gap. So these are issues we may want to look at altogether. Let me quickly bring you back home that at Accra Technical University, we realized that this is a challenging problem for the nation, and we have begun to think of what we can do to contribute our little quota. And I welcome you once again to Accra Technical University. Recently, we developed a strategic plan over 5 years, 2021 to 2025, with 8 pillars. I will not talk about it. We have a new vision, but I can talk about our philosophy at least. Our philosophy is to train and form people so that they are immediately employable or they can create a job. This is a very great vision, that people who come to study here don't add to the unemployment rate because they can get a job immediately, and if they don't get, they have the ability to create a job. I don't want to stay long here, but I want to mention another example. I was attending another forum in the energy sector. We now have financiers who are ready to put in a lot of money for people who want to develop independent, power producers. We call them IPP. And I tell you, the money is available, the scheme is available, but you don't get anybody to apply. You get companies to apply only from outside because somebody has not been trained with the skill it takes to come out, with this type of business. Meanwhile, it's a requirement. We have energy crisis all the time. So if you can come out with a proposal that you can develop a solar power plant of 10 kilowatts, and then they can give you the money to do so, and then you sell to the grid and you pay back, is it not good business? But the person is trained, he's an engineer from KNW, he's an engineer from ATU, and yet he's unemployed, the money is there, and the job is not done. This is the situation we are all facing. Is it a good situation? It's not good at all. So that is why our educational philosophy is looking at you getting employed or creating the job immediately. And to do so, we cannot just do it in isolation. We really need your support in many regards. We need your support in many regards. I will not take a lot of time. I will just mention a few initiatives we have undertaken these few days. One of them is we have begun to understand that our relationship with the industry needs to be deepened for many things to happen. And so we thank IFC here. They stood by us, and together we started a tracer study. So this is going far. We are trying to really locate over 73 years where our graduates are. Where are they? Some are CEOs of companies and co. They can be brought back to their alma mater to contribute their quota. Thank you so much. And it's an ongoing program. We established yesterday what we call a program advisory committee for the first time. This is great. You should have been there. Those who missed this, I don't know. But it's a very great program. It's great expectation. This is to bring the industry very close to us, to contribute to this department and to support in all that they do, to bring in a lot of industry experience. And I think at the right time we can talk about it. And also to deepen our relationship with academia and industry, we were looking at secondment. Secondment is a great policy we are looking at now, because we believe that it's time for our lecturers to begin to go into the industry and see what is happening there, refresh their memory about what they learned so that their teaching will be improved. And at the same time, industry should come on board to take more of our students into their internships and other programs. And then again, we begin to believe that we need to design more and more specific short courses that meet, the requirement of industries today. It's so fast changing that if you want to develop a 4 years program to meet maybe what is happening or the requirement tomorrow, by the time the program is developed and approved, you have started running, it has changed again to be another scale. So what are you going to do? 4 years is too long. Sometimes somebody needs to learn something over a month and 2 months, and this person can survive the rest of his life. So begin to think about short courses. People need to be given soft skills. And again, another thing we believe we have to do better is what we are doing today now. That is engaging the industry the best way. We need to collaborate with you. You need to debate on most of these matters. So I want to welcome you all who are not from here but who have joined us this morning. You are welcome. We expected you so much. And I want to leave you on this word. Remember, your participation here today should not just be listening to speeches from people, but try to go deeper and collaborate with somebody. Get to know a department, a dean, a faculty, a head of department, and see how you can contribute your quota to the development of this, our curriculum and our drive towards bridging the gap between academia and industry. Because very soon, we inaugurated one committee yesterday, and in the close future coming, we are looking at many different faculties. So they will be looking at industry experts to serve on their board as advisory committee. They will also be looking at people who will help them, giving them grant sponsorship, maybe internship for lecturers and co. Please do not go without making some relationship. The best for the day. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Professor Mevi. Indeed, stronger collaborations with industry and academia is very important. Apart from Abigail, you are welcome. So as Prof said, we have a couple of institutions. I know we have Lancaster Central, so our partners. I know from Bolga Technical University, so all of you are welcome, and our industry partners as well. Thank you also, Dr. Afetobo from the CTVET. We hope that in our collaborations and our deliberations, we would look at how we can effectively engage with the industry. I would now call on Madame Jamila Hessiboyeli to give us her welcome remarks from IFC.
Thank you very much, Amma. Professor Akakpovi, Deputy Vice Chancellor of Accra Technical University, distinguished deans who've been introduced, representatives from higher education institutions, cherished partners, private sector leaders, IFC colleagues, and ladies and gentlemen. My name is Jamila Hajibeolu. I'm IFC Senior Country Officer for the Ghana cluster of countries, and it is my pleasure to welcome you to this seminar on effective employer engagement. As you know, IFC, or the International Finance Corporation, is the largest global development institution focused on private sector in emerging markets. As a member of the World Bank Group, we work in more than 100 countries, providing financing and advisory services for private sector development. Needless to say, the private sector is nothing without people, skilled, educated people, and that's higher education. It's critical in this effort. The number of students in higher education is set to double over the next 3 years, with nearly all growth taking place in developing markets. What else is growing rapidly? Graduate unemployment. Sadly, this divergence between the number of graduates and the number of graduates' jobs is driven in part by mismatch between the graduates' preparation and the skills employers need. Thus, we're facing a paradox. But we also have an opportunity because this is a solvable problem. IFC's Employability program in Ghana helps higher education institutions prepare students for the workplace. IFC's VTE program specifically targets employability outcomes to produce graduates who can flourish in an increasingly global economy. Since 2019, we have worked with the Ghana Tertiary Education Commission to improve the employability outcomes of technical universities across Ghana and enrich the educational environment of our students. Therefore, IFC remains committed not only to expanding access to high-quality tertiary education across Africa, but also expanding access to jobs upon graduation. One such way is through industry partnerships, an effective method for educational institutions to ensure that students are working with cutting-edge relevant education and skills development, ultimately helping propel Ghana towards sustainable long-term growth and economic transformation. Universities and industry are natural partners for bridging the skills gap and sparking innovation. By seeking to understand industry and community requirements, we can provide high-quality teaching that meets the needs of today's local and global industries. The seminar today will focus on effective frameworks to improve university-industry collaboration. Together, we can create opportunities for our students and communities we serve. And IFC is proud to support this work as we seek to advance employability outcomes for students and graduates. Thank you very much for your strong support, and believe that together we can continue to grow and strengthen graduate employability across Ghana and throughout the African continent.
Thank you, Jamila. So we also have the regulator for higher education with us, and we would get remarks from them.
This far. They has come with a number of challenges, but we've been able to surmount most of them. And I'm happy to say that the work is progressing steadily. We are making a lot of strides in terms of the survey. And I'm particularly happy to hear that, Accra Technical University has set up its program advisory board. And I think that they deserve a round of applause for. It looks like because you are Accra, you always want to start before the rest, which is a good sign. My Bolga people, I hope they will take cue and run with it. But I think GTech has always been very committed to issues of employability. Aside trying to regulate norms and standards, develop policies, I think that is also important for us to begin having the conversation about what the impact is. With all these curriculum that we are approving and programs that we are accrediting, how has it been impactful in terms of the, giving the student or building the student up for employment? And I think that for GTech, we will be failing if at the end of the day, at the end of the survey, the results come out and it shows that whatever programs that we are accrediting or whatever quality assurance standards that we are trying to put in place is not yielding the kind of results that we want to see when it comes to the end product, that is students getting gainful employment or probably being able to even employ themselves. Yesterday I was listening to the radio and something struck me. The Ghana Petroleum Commission Director, Egbert Fabel, he said that in the petroleum sector, we do not have the required skilled personnel to even weld. And I was shocked. I was really shocked. To weld, common welding, that we see, just welding. We do not have the skills. The students we are producing from the technical university or from our various institutions do not have the skill to weld on the various, the shores, the upstream, the rigs. So I was just thinking in my mind, I see a lot of welders on the street, and I'm wondering what kind of welding is he talking about that we do not have that skill. And they had to sponsor 5 students at a cost of almost $1.something million in Canada to train them on how to weld. And they have been back, and they've placed them in various institutions to do the TOT. And I was really, really surprised. So I think it's a big challenge. It's a huge challenge for technical universities, because that is our mandate. That is what we should be aspiring to do. Building, our students, or, imbibing with our students these skills that we require, so that we don't have to spend that much money training students to be able to weld. So we are very excited about this project, and we are pushing it as hard as we can, and we hope that we get the report soon, and then we can begin the implementation as far as issues of employability is concerned. So I want to end here and thank you very much for your presence.
Thank you so much, Edmond. So we would be moving to our first presentation now. I just wanted to say that Edmond, in terms of program advisory committees, Takoradi has launched 22 already. Kumasi has launched 11, and this afternoon we'll be in Tamale to launch 8 of them. So as we move across bringing together industry, this would help address some of these challenges. Our first speaker for today is Dr. Peter Constantinou. He is with York University and an expert with IFC. He has also been supporting the institutions in Ghana undertake the process of launching their program advisory committees. And today, Peter would give us a lot more detail on effectively engaging with industry. So without much ado, I would call Peter to come and give us his presentation. Whilst Peter comes, I also want to welcome our online audience. I know we have audience online, so our online audience, you are all welcome. I think you can email questions if you have any questions, so please email it to the team and we'll be happy to pick them up. Thank you.
Thank you, Amma, and thank you to our hosts and to our IFC partners and to all of you for your interest in this topic. I come here through a long journey. My parents were refugees from the Second World War. They left Europe to come to Canada for a better opportunity for their children. With no education themselves, no skills, no language, they just said, go to school. They saw school, though they didn't understand where and what, they saw school as a great opportunity. And I went to school and I discovered that I was interested in a career in the public service, working for government and broader public service in some form of administration. And it was a co-op experience I had between my 3rd and 4th year during the summer, where I worked in government, where I discovered this is where my passion lies. It gave me information to help make an informed decision about what I have to do to get there, what courses I need to take. It told me that I could get into government and have a good career with my bachelor's degree, but if I had a master's degree, I could move into leadership. And it gave me valuable information about what different departments do and where I should focus my interests. I completed my degree, and that same department where I was a co-op student hired me as a full-time employee. On the first day I got there, I was excited. I thought I knew a lot, and I was ready to go, ready to work, ready to make a difference. And my boss said, "The minister needs a briefing note." And I said, "Okay, what's a briefing note?" And they said, "Okay, well, here's some examples from past efforts, figure it out." And it was one assignment after another where I realized that while I had a wonderful education, I lacked the skills to hit the ground running. And I've spent most of my life there living in the space between the university and industry and thinking a lot about how to make that gap narrower. And so as someone who spent his time as a civil servant, as a political advisor, as a university administrator, and now as an academic working with partners to try to narrow that gap, what I've discovered is it's very simple. Now, it's not easy, but it's simple. And I saw that simplicity in action yesterday. Yesterday, we launched a program advisory committee where for the first time we had faculty from the automotive department meeting with leaders of automotive companies. Within the first half an hour, they agreed to make 120 placements for students. And they just didn't agree to take students in their one company, but to rotate them in cohorts of 20 so that every student has a workplace experience in 5 different automotive manufacturers. Now, to my mind, that's success. So what I want to do today is talk a little bit about the idea of engaging with employers and use some examples as a way of demonstrating the potential for this low-cost or no-cost solution. I can attest as a university administrator, many companies and consultants will come to sell us very expensive things. But this one is a simple one that doesn't cost anything. Especially technical universities. We should be sitting down with industry and asking, how can we prepare our students better for careers in your sector? And what I witnessed yesterday was the magic of goodwill and self-interest. Industry understands that it is in their interest that if students come to them better skilled, better prepared, that the transition to work is very short. What we've seen is orientation and training periods shrink instead of months to weeks or instead of weeks to days. And the programs that have these partnerships are the ones that are delivering success. And so that's what I would like to talk to you about today. We've heard a little bit this morning about how the context we're in is affecting what we do. And so the first point I'd like to make is the context is that the environment we're in is changing rapidly. What I learned in my first year, by the time the third year comes up, it's obsolete. We have to unlearn and relearn something new. And so we now know that just learning things isn't enough. It's the capacity and the skill of being able to learn that's probably the most valuable. The second part of that is adaptability. When we're working with industry, we stay in touch with the nuances of change. If we're able to focus on those changes, we teach students the capacity to change. So if we're going to keep up with an environment that is moving quickly, we've got to be connected to it. And I can tell you, as a faculty member, the day that I left the government to join a school of public policy was the day I started to become out of touch with what was happening. So our connections to industry are really crucial. Also, never before has the business of higher education been more competitive. Now, sometimes that's where do you fall on the rankings. But in other cases, it's simply there's a marketplace of students who now have more choices than ever as to where they go. And increasingly, students, their parents, they're making decisions on where they go based on the programs, connections to opportunities with industry, co-op placements, and other elements. So if we don't have those things, we become less competitive. And for me, of course, what drew me to education was always the idea that someone did something to transform my life. Going to school when I did, having a degree, even though there weren't applied skills, in those days that was enough to improve my life. And so I'm predisposed to wanting to help others. How can I help others if I'm not equipping them or empowering them with what they need? And so that's where those industry connections are so very important. And we can't do this alone. I can't possibly know what's happening in every sector of the economy as skills change on the factory floor in various forms of knowledge and applied skills. I've got to be working with industry in order to do that. So the idea that we can somehow work separately, this was for a very long time the ethos of the classical university, that it should be separate. They used to say the town and the gown should have no connection, that we are somewhat removed. Well, those days are gone. The key to our economic success is our capacity to empower our students to transition to work. And as my good friend has said in his opening remarks, if we're not doing short courses or micro-credentials to keep everyone connected to higher education, then we're missing a great opportunity. And finally, I would say, I have not met a university anywhere in the world that says they have too much money. It's always the opposite. We're stretching every dollar as far as we can. So when I go to my dean and say, I can put in place a practicum program where students volunteer to work in industry, and we work on a reflective process to help them think about what they're learning so that they benefit immensely, the dean says, where do I sign? Because I'm not asking for any money. And so I think there's a lot of opportunity when we sit down and ask ourselves, what can we do to bridge that gap? How can we serve our students better? And we don't have to have all of those answers. What I saw yesterday, the magic of program advisory committees, was industries came to us and said what they thought that we needed to do. Faculty were more than happy to help. So for me, this is a very simple idea. Let's engage with industry. And some will say, I don't even know where the industry is. I don't know where our students go when they leave here. Well, I think a lot of the data that we're going to collect during the tracer study will help us to understand that. But when we're working at a program level, now it has never been easier than in the past to stay connected with our alumni. That's our first group of opportunity. Our students go out and work, Now we have to keep them connected to our programs. So in my school, we have now the 47th year of annual alumni dinner, where we bring them back. There are some awards for volunteerism, and we work very hard to keep that list of volunteers and where they're working up to date, so that we know where our students have gone, and we work with them to hire our students. Our alumni hire our students. They know better than anyone the quality of our programming and all that our students have to add. And then we ask our alumni to get involved. Sometimes it's a book club, sometimes it's a mentorship circle. We even now have simulations for job interviews, so when our students leave school to compete for a job, they've already had mock interviews where industry leaders are giving them feedback on their performance. Simple, easy to implement solution, just requires a little bit of time. So the Active Alumni Network is the first way to engage with industry, because they're the ones that are more likely going to want to stay connected. The next thing we've been doing, and I've seen this in jurisdictions all over the world, we're asking industry to come back and engage with us. Now, we've heard this morning a call to have professors visit industries, to spend some time, a sabbatical, working there, learning, and to have industry officials come and part of the department. Now, in our school, we do this sometimes by just having them do guest lectures. But we've tried to go further, to be more competitive. We have invited industry leaders to be practitioner academics, so they teach part-time in our programs. And when an important official, for example, in the city where I'm from, the mayor is retiring, we invite the mayor to be executive in residence to give advice to students in a municipal government program, so that they have the latest and the greatest source of information. So having executives in residence is a really great opportunity. Most of the time, we don't even have to pay them. They see this as a great honor. It's a privileged position. It's 5 hours or 1 day a week. We give them an office, a business card, and they like to give back to students. And so they see this as a great opportunity. Again, it's a win-win-win. So executive in residence, a nice way of doing this. Also, program advisory committees, and this is the main focus of my conversation today. The idea is really simple. How can we ensure that everyone succeeds? The concept is as follows. As a university, we benefit from their insight. They give us advice on ensuring that our curriculum is relevant. They help us with co-curricular activities, placements, co-ops, mentorships, simulations, other things. And ultimately, they bring resources to us. Let me give you an example. At one of Canada's leading technical colleges, we have an aviation program. And the major airline carrier in Canada is Air Canada, and Air Canada came to us. We sat down with them and we said, what can we do to make sure that our graduates transition to work as pilots as effectively and as efficiently as possible? And they reviewed the curriculum with us. They made some minor suggestions. But what they said was, if the students could spend some time on simulators, that would advance their move from small planes to big planes. Now, a simulator costs over $1 million. Government wasn't funding us for a new simulator. But that didn't stop us. Air Canada and the college went to the company that makes simulators, and they donated 2 of them. So now our program has an advantage in the marketplace. No other aviation degree in the country has these large airline simulators. And what Air Canada has told us is that they've now narrowed the training program from 4 months to 40 days. So our students move into a pilot role in a big jet in a much shorter time. Students benefit, college benefits, industry benefits, and that just cost us a bit of time. No money, no resources other than a few meetings. And the benefit, the synergy of bringing industry and the school together with the purpose of putting the students first. So there's a simple example of bringing resources to a program. I'll give you another example. We sat down with a manufacturing program and some industry officials, and their complaint was that they had certain skills, but they ended at a certain level. And we said, well, we don't have the equipment. The equipment was expensive. We didn't think we could get anyone to donate the equipment, but industry said, your students can come in the afternoons when the equipment is not being used to learn on the equipment. That's a great contribution for 2 reasons. First, anytime we take students to workplaces, there's a lot of opportunity to observe the workplace, the work culture. Secondly, an opportunity to work on those machines meant the minute they graduated, they were ready to hit the ground running. And so 2 simple examples of the ways in which equipment has been donated or made available in partnership. One of the things we hear from industry so very often is, this is good for us because we can get to know the students, we can see which ones are the very good workers, the not so good workers, so we check them out, they check us out, and it's a pipeline for recruitment. And so many of our companies now, after doing this a few times, have built it into their annual planning. They know they're going to have 10 or 20 or 50 students come through every year, and there's a program of study. And our experience in Canada is 50% of the students that engage in a work placement are hired back by the company that they worked for. And another 25% are hired somewhere else because of the experience and skills that they have. We never had success rates like that before. And I guess what we're all wondering now in a post-COVID world is, how do we fix the challenges that exist in the economy? Well, when I hear stories about a shortage of welders, I can tell you that in Canada we have the same problem. Skilled trades, we're constantly importing people from other countries. If industry doesn't sit down with the university to think about the solutions, I don't think we're going to fix that problem. So to my mind, this is just a natural fit. One of the things that I found really useful of program advisory committees is sometimes we don't realize the impact of the fact that now that they know us, now that they've spent time on our campus, now that they've gotten to know our students and our faculties, often the PAC members are now champions for the university and for the program. They're ambassadors. They're out there telling the world about what this wonderful place has to offer. And I've also found the PAC very useful even internally within the university's own administration, where we've been asking our dean for something, permission, approval, sometimes money. Well, now the PAC members are putting pressure on the dean or the president to help us, to say, this is really what we need, or this is what we want. So it's not the faculty who want things for themselves, it's industry saying, this is what your students need. Internally, that can be a great validation of all of the things that we think we need. Because if there's one thing I've learned is the voice of industry, our employers of our students, is often going to resonate more strongly than simply those of us within the faculty. The second part of this that I never anticipated was proof of concept. When we put industry together with faculty, not only do they serve our students well, but what then occurs almost organically is faculty start collaborating on research projects with industry. And in many cases, our programs are generating revenues from this activity. So together, we create things that we can sell. And one of the things we've done in Canada is we've given the IP, the intellectual property ownership of things that are created within the university to the faculty. So if I create something that has commercialization value, I get the revenue from it. Well, that's a great incentive for me as a faculty member to invent things, to create things, to commercialize things. Well, when I get the privilege of working with industry, all of a sudden now the potential is multiplied. And so we never used PACs as a way of creating revenue sources for the department or faculty, but all of a sudden they came. Most of our employers in the small and medium-sized part of the economy can't afford to do great, expensive kinds of research projects. But the collaboration with individual faculty on a program level is a much more affordable and accessible way of accessing these types of services. So now we're seeing small and medium-sized companies level up to that next opportunity because they've had this well-established connection. So I guess my message is very clear. Once we sit down at the table, the creative juices start to flow. Opportunities we never envisioned will emerge, and that becomes very much a win-win situation. Please. So for me, it's as simple as the following. Every program in Canada now has to have a program advisory committee. So the government has passed a rule. Every college that has a technical programming must establish and maintain a program advisory committee. This forced us to do it. Many faculty were reluctant. I don't have time to talk to industry. I'm busy teaching. Once they sat down at the table, they realized the benefits. It made their work easier. It made their work more relevant. It brought in new opportunities. It elevated that curriculum and that experience. And most importantly, for our students, it gave them work-integrated learning. My job in my department now at the university, in addition to being a tenured faculty member, is to be the experiential education director. And so I look at every course we teach with the faculty member and say, what can we do to make this better connected to work-integrated learning, to workplace skills? What can we do? It may not be a placement, may not be a co-op, but it could be a consulting opportunity. So instead of just doing a theoretical exercise, why don't we have a real client? We'll do the work for free. The client benefits, we benefit. The client learns more about our program. Next thing you know, they're hiring our students. Our students go to job competitions and say, in addition to my education, I've had this placement, and this consulting assignment where I did an evaluation report. Here's a copy of my work. What we're seeing is our students are more competitive, they're more successful, we move up in the rankings. students feel like they've had a true and positive experience, they're more likely to remain connected as active alumni. Our industry partners are happier. They're getting better quality experiences in their new employees, and faculty are stimulated. And so, for me, looking at your programs and asking, what are our goals and objectives? What would we like to accomplish? Think about who in industry might want to volunteer on a program advisory committee. Think about half of that committee as your alumni and half of that committee as other industry leaders. Some should represent individual businesses, some should represent industry associations. Have a conversation with each of them individually, because there's nothing worse than a good person who thinks they're going to just be giving advice, but now you're asking them for fundraising. So have a conversation where we understand what they're interested in doing, how they feel they can contribute, so that we know that there is a direct match. Bring them together. Meet 2 or 3 or 4 times a year. Have a very focused, short, medium, and long-term strategy. Identify some quick wins to demonstrate the power that exists in a pack. As I mentioned, yesterday's first meeting, in the first half hour, generated a full placement for every single one of the students in the program. To my mind, that's already success. And think about the committee, support the committee's work, and continue to set goals and objectives, and you'll see the power of this army of volunteers who champion your programs and help you better prepare your students for success. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Peter. I think that was very, very useful, clear, and yeah, we would get to the conversation, the discussion, so we can talk about questions when we get there. Our next speaker is from Ashesi University. So Peter is from Canada. We would say that we want to see how successful this would also be in Ghana. Ashesi is known to work well with industry, and we have Abigail Welbeck, who is the Director for Career Services, who will talk to us about how Ashesi engages with employers. Abigail, you are welcome.
Thank you so much. Good morning. Good morning. Thank you so much to ATU for the opportunity, to IFC for the opportunity to speak on this very, very important topic and to provide some perspectives from Ashesi University. Thank you, fellow panelists, and thank you, Peter. You gave us a very wonderful and insightful presentation. I see a lot of synergy between what you shared and what I also have as conversation. So, by way of introduction, my name is Abigail Welbeck. I'm the Director of Career Services at Ashesi University. And just also for context, Ashesi is a private liberal arts core curriculum university in Brekusu in Eastern Region, just on the outskirts of Accra. And we have a student population of about 1,300 students currently. And we are definitely not perfect. We are still working our way towards where we have to be. There are a couple of things we're doing in line with employer engagement towards graduate employability, and so I'll be sharing some of those because I know there are participants here who are really keen on understanding how they can also begin to implement some of these interventions. So also just creating some bit of context is, for us, why graduate employability and partnering with employers is very critical to the work that we are doing as an institution is when we look around us, all around us, there's change, right? There's change globally, socially. change is happening all around us, and I think Peter also alluded to that. And as a result of that, we're seeing a direct impact on learning and work. So how we learn and how we work. And implications on how teaching must be done. If the change that we're seeing is impacting how we learn and how we work, then it's definitely going to have implications on how we should teach, or how teaching must be done, and students' career path. And these are just a few examples I wanted to share. If we look at how we work, there's been a shift from traditional work to, an example is problems we need to solve and skills we need to learn in order to solve those problems. We look at entrepreneurship, a lot of businesses that are coming up looking at solving specific problems in the society. We're seeing young people who are doing multiple things at the same time. I think Peter talked about options. They have more options now. So, right, you're seeing a student who's learning online, working on a day job, driving an Uber at night, and they've started a business with friends, all at the same time. In the past, you wouldn't see something like that. Once again, alluding to the change that we're seeing in terms of work. So, technology has also introduced a lot of change, right? Digitization, automation, AI, robotics, etc. Just changing the whole scope of work. Just looking at what happened with COVID and how everything went online, right? Also with social media. If you look at marketing your business, now social media is a huge platform for that. Initially, we used to go through newspapers, etc., but things are changing and changing very quickly. So if learning and work is changing, and how we teach should change, and the workplace is also changing as a result of that, then both spaces, those of us who are in academia and those in industry, we need to co-create this next ecosystem of learning and work in a very inclusive and collaborative way. And this is how I explained it, right? There's a paradigm shift. What is happening at the work is influencing teaching and learning. And then what is happening in the classrooms also to determine the product and the talent that is going to manage an advanced industry, which means what one party does affects the other. So we need to begin to unify our efforts. We need to look through a unified lens so that we can appreciate what is going on in academia, and also what is going on at the workplace, so that together we can work towards achieving success and excellence. And another aspect of this that I wanted to even add is we need to think critically about the students that we are teaching and the same students who are going into the workplace, right? And the dynamics around them, and they themselves are changing, and how their thinking is changing, and how they're acting and behaving changing. I see organizations trying to understand them better, understand how they think, because sometimes you also need to understand your clients, and sometimes the perspectives that the students will give will help you to do that better. And we need to include them in some of these conversations, right? Because if we are co-creating around how to teach them and how to engage them at work, we have to find a way of involving them in these conversations to understand how they are also thinking, so that we can include that in the solutions that we are trying to come up with. So for Ashesi, we engage employers in different ways. And employer engagement, though career services handles a good amount of that, there are different aspects of our university that also handle employer engagement. So I'll talk about experiential learning just quickly. There are three that I'll touch on into a bit more detail shortly, but just quickly, experiential learning. So yes, we have the internship program, we have a job shadowing program that allows students, it's like a mini internship, that allows students to engage in industry for a shorter period of time, it's like a workplace immersion program. We also have a career mentoring program where industry, and I like Peter emphasizing a lot on alumni. Alumni are such an important pool of candidates to look at if we're trying to support our students' graduate employability. So we have that as well. And then we have a biennial employers forum, a corporate council. I'll explain that in a minute. And then feedback from industry is so important to the work that we do. How are our students performing? What are they doing right that we need to celebrate? What are they doing not too well that we need to go back to the drawing board on, not as career services, but as an institution to look at it? So even though career services will take the information, we need to disseminate it to the entire institution, to faculty, to management, to administration. What is it that each of us can do differently to make sure that the gaps that we have identified as a result of employer feedback, we are filling that in a collaborative way? So I want to touch on, yes, and we also have guest lecturing, and I know Peter mentioned that. I want to touch on 3 major interventions we have: corporate council, engineering, our engineering curriculum and how we engaged employers for that, and then employer internship feedback and how it informs our program design. So our corporate council, we started with the corporate council around 2010, and essentially this was looking at a number of organizations. We wanted to see how, to involve employers and industry input in the programs that we were designing. And so we looked around us. At that time, Ashesi didn't have too many international students, so a lot of our concentration in terms of student outcomes was really looking here in Ghana. So we're all organizations centered here in Ghana, but we looked at the key industries that were in Ghana at the time, and then we looked at how to engage them. So essentially, we were looking at companies that had hired a number of Ashesi students, companies whose values aligned with ours. And then so we had 12 companies: telecommunication, oil and gas, banking and finance, technology, engineering, etc. Right? So if you're looking at setting up a similar thing, based on what you want to achieve, you know which industries to engage. And we met with them, so it was our executive team with academic HODs. They sat twice in a year, once every semester, where our president would share the strategic plan for the institution, and talk about reports or updates from previous meetings, and then open discussion up, right? So employers had the opportunity to comment and give feedback on the strategic decisions that the institution was thinking about, and comment about that, whether they were going the right way, whether there were things we needed to pay more attention to. Industry was giving us that feedback, because at the end of the day, the students were going to go back to industry to work. So why don't we bring industry in to give us that information as we are designing the programs or as we are implementing them, so we know how to do it right. And then we also talked about mutually beneficial opportunities for collaboration. 2 major interventions or outcomes, I would say, from the corporate council. The conversation about our engineering program started from the corporate council. So those of you who have followed Ashesi closely, one of our newest majors is our engineering program, and we graduated a fair set of engineers in 2019. And so the conversation started far back as 2010 with industry, because of the trends at the time. They felt engineering was a very important major to consider. And then our French program. So for example, we had industry telling us our students are great, but for those of them who were multinationals, who had presence in Francophone countries, our students or alumni could not be transferred to those countries because they couldn't speak the French language. So we were highly recommended to think of a way to include French into our programming. So we started discussion there, and right now we do have a French program that has been running for a while. So these are like recommendations that are actually have materialized now as we speak. Ashesi Employer Forum, which is a meeting of all our employer stakeholders. We try to do that once every 2 years. And we just use that opportunity to have a conversation with our employer stakeholders. How is the relationship going? What is it that we're doing well? What is it that we need to change? And we use that as an opportunity to also inform them about updates about the institution. So keeping our employers really close, keeping them updated, making sure that we understand their concerns, and making sure that we are implementing their concerns, and we are giving them feedback as we implement it, so that they feel like they're part and parcel of us. They can see the value that they are bringing to the table. So we also currently have Ashesi advisory boards now, We have one for our executive team specifically. So what has happened is, in the past, the corporate council was more centralized, handled all matters of the institution, but now Ashesi has grown bigger. So now what we're having is more program-specific advisory boards. So our executive team who sit and look at our strategy plan. So Ashesi has a next 10-year strategy plan right now, but they have an advisory board made of seasoned executives who have the needed background, whether it's a technical background. So for example, if Ashesi is thinking of a biochemistry major, then there's someone in that space, or executives who have had the experience of creating strategy plans. And then they share their experience and expertise and act as sounding board for the executive team. And they started by meeting every month, then to quarterly, then to us and when it was needed. So it started initially when they were now trying to understand what they needed to do. They were meeting more, then it went to quarterly, then us and when needed, right? And this will be dissolved once the strategy plan is presented to the board and is approved. So that's an ad hoc board that has been formed. We also have right now our departments, our academic departments, are setting department-specific advisory boards, because each department has unique needs and a unique set of employers that they would like to engage with. And so what is happening now is, for example, our engineering department are coming up with an advisory board, thinking of members from diverse engineering backgrounds, large, small, startup, fully established. They're looking at alumni. They're looking at even faculty to be part of that, because you need a diverse set of views as you think about your programming. And it's also to give faculty insights into industry trends and the needs and the opportunities. Remember that I talked about change at the beginning. You need to understand the change that is happening and how that change could possibly impact your programming and what you're doing. So Ashesi's engineering curriculum, I mentioned that engineering, the discussion on engineering started as far back as 2010, but in 2013, active planning started. So right now, we have the computer engineering, electrical, electronic engineering, and mechanical, and which places a lot of emphasis on hands-on learning. This is as a result of the feedback that we received from industry. It's a very hands-on learning program. It's focused on entrepreneurship, design, and problem solving. A lot of before, engineering was the way we thought about engineering, did not really think of the problems we are seeing around us, not just thinking of how to solve it, but actually creating solutions, not solutions that have been created outside of Africa and brought to us, so may not necessarily sync with the problems you're facing, but solutions that are targeted towards the problems we are facing around us, right? So how do we get our students to think about that? So problem solving equips students with skills to create long-term solutions to Africa's engineering challenges and deploys better design infrastructure for local needs. You see a lot of concentration on Africa and local needs and the local context is what we're trying to do with our engineering program. Provide solutions to the problems we are encountering here by ourselves. So this was developed over 2.5 years. Ashesi's engineering curriculum is a collaborative process between Ashesi and top engineering schools, employers, stakeholders around the world. So the curriculum that we have with engineering, and this is also something we're still constantly refining, is as a result of industry telling us that we have a lot of engineers in the system, but we still have a lot of problems. So how can you create a curriculum that can merge those two? Engineers who come and not only have the knowledge, but can actually solve the problems we are facing locally around us. So what we did, we reached out to, this is when we were trying to design the curriculum, reaching out to, across Ghana, we invited engineering education stakeholders, and then professors and industry players. And they helped us to identify the gaps between Ashesi's new engineering curriculum that we had at the time and the industry needs. And we had over 40 guests present, and they gave us very comprehensive feedback to help us to make sure that Ashesi's engineering graduates were well prepared to build innovative tools and solutions for Africa. So that's the engineering program. The last intervention I'm going to talk about is how we use industry feedback to inform our programming, right, as an institution. So what you're seeing here is a report we generate every year following our internship program. And I think the rhetorical question I want to ask is, what do we do with the internship evaluation forms that we give out to our students to go and have filled by employers or by their supervisors every internship period? What do we do with it? I know some institutions use it to grade students, so they have done an internship tick. But beyond that, what else do you do with that information? Because that is data that is informing the institution about what is going on well and what is not. Because they're giving feedback about your students' performance. So what Ashesi does is, we pick that evaluation, we put it together, it's an online evaluation, so then we analyze that data. And the data tells us a story. Ashesi has 8 learning goals. And when we say learning goals, it just means that the different competencies that drive the training that we are giving to students. So across the institution, across administration and faculty, we're saying that these are the 8 learning goals that we want to achieve. When we look at an Ashesi graduate at the end of their 4 years, we should see each of these invested in them. We should see a student who's very professional, who can communicate well, who has teamwork and leadership skills, who's innovative and action-oriented, who has curiosity and skills, who is ethical, who is concerned about the environment, who has critical thinking, quantitative reasoning skills, and is technologically competent. So you think about your institution, what are the pillars that are driving the training and the teaching and learning that you have at your institution? So what we do is, now we have our learning goals on one side. We have what industry is telling us in terms of the outputs that we are generating on one side. So now we need to find out, is what we are saying we are doing with our students actually the case? We're saying students should have all of these competencies, but are they actually having them? Do they actually have them? Sorry. So what we do is, we've weighted all the questions in the internship evaluation to fit into the 8 learning goals. So the evaluation we are receiving is essentially telling us or marking us by our own marking scheme. So are your students really communicating well? Are they really ethical at the workplace? Do they really display teamwork and skills? So what we have said as an institution is that we have an institutional KPI that every year this report should show that we are performing good or excellent in each of the learning goals. And so we are driving ourselves as an institution to make sure this is our target. So the data you're receiving is, what are you doing with it? It has to drive program, and it has to drive interventions. And this is feedback that you're getting from no other but employers, because they are the ones your students are going to. So we need to think of that as well, as how do we engage employer feedback to advise our programming. And lastly, I was talking to my dean of students yesterday, just going through this slides with them, and one critical thing he mentioned, which I included in my slide, is it's not enough to engage the employer. It's how do you keep them engaged? Because employers are busy, they have their own work they're doing. How do you keep them invested in your institution continuously to keep coming back to do these things that you need them to do with your institution? So a couple of things that I put down is, A, keep the workload as light and manageable as possible for them, right? But also make the return on investment very clear to them. Make it very, very clear to them. Yes, they have a pipeline of seasoned talents. The talents you are investing in as the talent that is coming to you to make impact and add value to your workplace. Having a hands-on career center, a career development center that is dedicated to supporting their recruitment needs is very important. We've got employers who tell us that it's easy to communicate with Ashesi because when we call, there's somebody to pick up the phone. When we email, somebody responds. It's easier. They want somebody who is invested in their needs as well, so that when they have to communicate with someone, there's somebody there ready to hear and listen and to act on what they need. And then also students' capstone projects that could be designed or that could be focused on company projects. So companies have problems they want to solve. It may not be very urgent, or they may not have the capacity immediately to solve them. So how can you have students work on projects for them? That's also value addition to them, right? And then opportunities for capacity development. We are looking at academia. So academia is training students and training other professionals. So how can you also offer training to their employees? Doesn't mean, they're coming in all the time, but maybe have certain programs intermittently that also support some capacity development for them as well. That's value addition for them. Another way to keep them coming back. Other ways is keep them updated on implementation and developments because they're giving you feedback. If I give you feedback, I want to know how that feedback is working, what is happening with it, what developments are coming up as a result of it. Keep them very much updated, developments that are happening, progress attained. Have like a quarterly newsletter that is reporting student and alumni success, right? So students are going out there, they're adding value to institutions, they are creating their own businesses, they're going to graduate school. It's like an elevator pitch. I keep saying that we tell students to craft elevator pitches for themselves, but we have to do the same for our institution. How are you there so that employers want to automatically associate with you? People are watching and people are listening. So you have to keep pushing your brand out there. The success your students are achieving, nobody's going to hear it if you don't push it out there, whether it's on social media, on your website, or have a quarterly newsletter that really outlines all that is happening and make sure that it is going to key stakeholders. Stakeholders you already have, but stakeholders you want to also have within your network. People want to associate with good brands, so make sure that your brand is selling itself in that regard. And invite them to high-level university events like graduation, make them feel important, right? And then celebrate the top employers who are adding value and consistently engaging. Celebrate them publicly, whether it's on social media, etc. Make them feel valued, and they'll keep coming back to you. I think that's pretty much it. Thank you very much. I'll be excited to get questions and add more context if anybody needs it. Thank you so much, Amma.
Thank you so much, Abigail. We would take a 10-minute break. Our breakfast is now served. It should have been served before, so sorry about that. But 10 minutes because we want to finish at 11:10, as we said. But before we take the break, we would want to take a photograph because I know that after the event, people would be rushing away. So can we come forward so we take a photograph here and then we will take a 10-minute break. If you want to go to the washroom is to my left. We would come back at, just want to make sure that, so we can start coming forward whilst I check the time. Okay, so we'll come back at 10:40. So photographers, can you help us to... So please, we can come here.
sure you are implementing effective teaching and learning systems in the institution. Because your graduates have to be able to perform and to add value. If that is not happening, then it doesn't matter how much of your horn you're blowing, nobody's going to look your way. So make sure teaching and learning is effective. So what are the systems you need to look at? What is happening in the classroom? And how can you better make those systems work? Once you do that, then now you begin to see how to begin to push, engagement or information about your institution and the great work you're doing out there a lot more. I mentioned that people are watching and people are listening. So as you begin to churn out success, you need to begin to get that information out to the stakeholders that you want to draw close. So is it employers? Are there key employers? Looking at the majors that you have in your institution, do you want to look at engineering? Do you want to look at, depending on the majors you have, target them and begin to share information to them so they see and they want to associate with your brand, right? And then begin to implement opportunities for them to engage. The employers who will see what you're doing are really interested, but will need to have an opportunity to engage. So we have the regular internships, yes, but what are other ways that they can engage? I mentioned that we have other experiential learning programs. We have a job shadowing program. We have a career mentoring program. Peter and I spoke about the program advisory councils, right, where they can engage. They want to add value because they see that the more they invest in your institution, the better candidates, the candidates that will come to them, right? So making that return on investment very clear for them and giving them opportunities to engage. Once they engage, make sure that the information you get from them, it's not sitting in one department. Make sure you find a way where the institution. So I mentioned that the feedback we take a lot of feedback from industry, but the feedback we take is not feedback about career services, but it's about the institution and the outcomes and the talent we are churning out. The talent we're churning out is a combination of efforts across the institution. So faculty, what's happening in the classroom? Administration, what's happening outside of the classroom? Management, they are making decisions for the institution. So each of these sections need to understand what they're doing well and what they can even better improve. So the feedback goes to everybody and we all take our piece and say, what can I do better? What can I do better in the classroom? Are there any aspects of the curriculum I need to tweak? In terms of strategizing for the institution, perhaps I need to involve employer feedback a bit more. In terms of career services, perhaps we need to create more opportunities for employers to engage. So everybody picks what they have to do and they run with it. So these are some of the things I think you can think about, in terms of sustaining employer engagement. And I talked about rewarding those who constantly engage. Find ways to reward them. It could be appreciating them on social media. It could be making them VIP, partners of your institution, but reward them so that they can keep coming to your institution. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll answer three of the questions I think that have been posed. The first is the ecosystem network. That's making it sound a lot more complicated than it really is. Where are your alumni? Where do they go? Who hires them? That's a great place to start. Second thing, outcomes. What are the outcomes of this? Well, I think you define what the outcomes are. If we focus on programs, and each program takes a hard look at themselves, what are our strengths, weaknesses, what opportunities and threats exist, what do we want to accomplish, what are our specific goals and objectives? We can use employer engagement and program advisory committees to help us achieve those things. So you define what success is and engage a group of volunteers to help you get. And finally, the question posed about, who should lead. My experience has been that when it's on a program basis, we have the greatest success. When we tend to cluster programs, it aggregates the understanding, the focus. When we're on the ground level, we're more able to help. So an example I've been using today is in my university, in our business school, we created a program advisory committee for the MBA programs. But there are 5 MBA programs. One of them is for mining executives. One of them is for financial technology companies, and so on. If we have one pack, they're only able to provide so much nuanced advice and assistance. But if we have a pack for mining MBA and we have a pack for the financial services or technology MBA, they will be more specific, more able to produce particular results. And so I think leadership should come at the program level.
Thanks, Peter. I think there was a related question, Peter, that you could just share your insights about examples of other institutions where you've seen risks related to these partnerships and how you've seen higher education institutions manage those.
Thank you. I've noticed this a lot after time. When we start a pack, everyone's very excited. And people come, it's a new thing, there's a lot of energy, they accomplish something, and then it dies. It becomes a conversation. So once, twice, 3 times a year they get together, they talk, but they don't produce results. And so the risk is we either take them for granted or we consider success a one-off venture. And so the most successful packs are ones where they're constantly re-examining their goals and objectives. They're looking at the terms of reference to ensure that we challenge them to stretch and reach for new deliverables, that faculty support them so they never feel overworked, so they can focus on the value added that they have. So, for example, often the chair of the program or the dean of the program will be the secretary so that none of the PAC members is taking minutes. A simple thing that lightens their workload. Have them focus on the things that they're very good at, keep them challenged, and continue to invest in identifying those goals and objectives, or over time they'll think that their job is done. And we just established a wonderful pack yesterday, as we were saying, with the automotive engineering group. They have short, medium, and long-term goals. This pack will not run out of things to do. And with every success, it will just bring them greater energy to continue that as they work through a work plan that is very specific.
Just to add to that as well is you need to think of who are you engaging in industry. Are you engaging high-level management, CEOs, MDs? Are you engaging mid-level? Are you engaging the technical practitioners? Because depending on the objective you have to know who you're engaging. There could be things that on the ground level that perhaps you engage top-level management and the information it just sits there because they are not the ones who have eyes on the ground. So we found that out when we were trying to reconstitute our corporate council is even if we're going to engage mid to top level management, we wanted them to come along with a technical person, right? So that the conversation would sip through the right channels and that it could be effective in terms of implementation, right? That's what you want to think about. So I think another one is to think about who exactly you are engaging with in industry, aligning with the goals and objectives that you have. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you both. I just want to ask the team that's tracking the online participants if we have questions. Sounded like there were questions online. No? Not. Okay, great. Any questions from the floor, perhaps, that haven't been answered? Colleagues here. Sorry, we've got one mic.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Privacy and leadership, all other protocol observed. My name is Alexis, the Industrial Liaison Officer from Bolga Technical University. My question is just a follow-up to the leadership that leadership question that was raised. And I want to observe that we are dealing with institutions, especially when it comes to the technical institutions. And the hierarchy, decisions, are strictly, adhered to, in terms of whatever implementation of anything at all that we do. So when it comes to engagement, we look at the corporate council level. We could see Patrick Ewa leading some of those engagements. At our technical universities, what will you recommend that the Vice Chancellor or the Pro-VC leads some of these, strategic engagement, or a small person like me, office there, actively engaging, this process. But at the end of the day, you would come and do a beautiful report. It goes up, it comes down, nothing happens. Resources, if you want to act on follow-up issues, you don't have the capacity to be able to do that. So what will be your recommendation regarding considering the strategy, the structure of our technical universities in terms of decision-making process? Thank you so much.
Thank you. Okay.
Okay, so my question is, within the context, like a follow-up to his, Ashesi, you may have been relatively successful because of your private outlook. In a public institution, highly unionized, how do you carry people along? I want to see how you did it within the private sector, knowing that the public nuances could be a bit different.
Thank you. Another question from the floor before we turn it back to the speakers?
Good morning, everyone. So I am Dr. Govinda. So I'm from Lancaster University, Ghana. So my question is somehow related to whatever the discussion happened. So it is only to just raise or extend discussion, whatever happened so far. So the overall idea is we are finding ways to engage the employers, and there are different ways suggested by Ashesi University KS manager, so sorry I forgot the name. And there are different ways suggested by him. But what I feel generally is people are finding it difficult and something different from what they do in their regular curriculum. Curriculum, what we mean is, okay, there are several definitions like experience or stipulated or something like that. But is there a way we can make this kind of engagement as part of the stipulated curriculum as some dynamic course or module, so that we need not put in any additional efforts? It happens naturally. It need not be like somebody sitting in a careers office should do it, a dean should do it, a lecturer should engage, alumni should come. So is there a way we can have a module, or do you suggest any such thing so that it can be part of the stipulated curriculum, so that it happens naturally alongside the whole other modules in the programs? So just some discussion on it would be helpful, I feel. Thank you very much. Right.
Thank you. Okay. So I'm hearing questions around who exactly in the institution should be leading it. Does it have to be somebody who's senior, and what of people who are lower down in management or in administration, and if they've empowered? And then if you can please just talk about the dynamic and the differences with the public sectors. A lot of our colleagues come from the public sector, so how do you manage and drive these initiatives in a public sector institution? And then how do we incorporate employability into teaching and learning and not keep it as a separate entity? Then I just want to add a question that came in online. How can faculty members who are outside of your network connect to your own people, of your own pool of industries, in order to groom students for the benefit of the community, of the Ghanaian economy? So thinking beyond my institution and PACS for my particular network, how do we seek for the network to benefit the broader employability nationally?
Thank you. Once again, good set of questions. Okay, so I'm going to start with the public university, private university dynamic. Just to say that thanks to the Education Collaborative, I get to work with other institutions, public institutions, who are also thinking about driving employability within their institution. So currently, even ATU is in that network, and ATU clearly has around 18,000 students. UCC is in that network. UCC is looking at around 70,000 students. But Peter and I were having a conversation earlier, and I was telling him that it's just about the institution saying it is possible. That's all that is needed. But there's definitely a way that public institution with bigger numbers can make it work. It's not a one-cup-fits-all. Every institution, even though you can have two public institutions, but their systems within the institution will differ from one to the other. So what the Education Collaborative does is we look critically at the internal system, because there's a program in Education Collaborative called the Systems Change Program. It looks at how do we implement change in a systematic way. So let's look at what has to happen. Thanks to IFC also, a number of these institutions are beginning to see the gap that they have when it comes to employability. So then we identify the gaps. Is how do we use the systems that are already within the institution to begin to create the change we want to see. And it's a 360 approach. So yes, management, because you need management buy-in. So you need management to be at that conversation. You need whoever is going to be the person responsible for driving it on the career services level to be in that conversation. You need faculty to be in that conversation. You need administration to be in that conversation. So then you begin to think about, with guidance, the excellent thing about Education Collaborative, it gives guidance. So you can begin to now think of what is possible. What are the systems that you have? For example, you could have an alumni liaison office. You could have a communications office. You could have somebody in the institution that is doing something around career services. Let's all come together. Let's understand where the gaps are and begin to now implement change towards that. It's change that will start small. Create a pilot. Make sure you start with something that works. So like a year intervention. When it works, then you scale up. It's all about finding a system or a process that works for a small set of your students, or you could start from a program level, like Peter said. Make sure it works, and then think of a scalability plan. Then it's something that has to happen over time. Maybe give yourself 5, 6, 7, 8 years time to reach even maybe 50% or more of the institution. But it's a strategy that we sit with you to develop, and then you begin to look at your systems and work on it. From a small scale, you scale it up and make it work. But it's definitely possible. It's something we are doing with UCC, we're doing with ATU and some other institutions. So it's definitely possible. It's a systematic change. It's not one person who sits in that conversation. It's not the responsibility. I was in UCC just a couple of days ago. We were sitting with the Dean of Students. They have a couple of programs. So they have DigiCap as well that we were thinking of using for that, for a couple of the interventions. But then we start with the Dean of Students. The conversation even changed. How do we see it to sit within the Dean of Students? Because of the structures they have, it may work better for them. When I come to ATU, it may not work better if it sits under Dean of Students. Do you understand? So depending on the situation and the systems, we create a strategy that we create a pilot around. When it works, then we scale it up. So it's definitely possible. Ashesi's module, it's not a copy and paste, but we look at what is working and how we can tailor it to fit within your institution. So just to say that as many of you who can join the Education Collaborative, please do join it. It's a very, very, it's to the advantage of the institution. Thank you. Sorry.
Yesterday when we launched the first automotive engineering pack, the Vice Chancellor launched the pack. In my university, we will have the most senior leaders available, the president, the vice president, the vice chancellor, attend to reinforce the importance of this. Once a year, we will bring the PAC members for dinner. We will acknowledge progress, so there'll be awards. We usually give the PAC members a membership to our gymnasium, a fitness club, a sweatshirt, something to make them feel like they belong, they're part of something. They're invited, as was recommended, to graduation, convocation ceremonies, and other large events. And so what we want to do is bring people in to be a part of the family, to be a part of the organization so that they will be champions. And having the most senior leadership reinforce that is a very important way to start. 95% of the universities in Canada are public. They're heavily unionized, and there are work formulas for how much time and how much teaching occurs, very prescribed. And so my answer to the question of how do we mobilize excitement in an environment where there are many kinds of work-related restrictions is we work with those that are willing. And usually I find 1 or 2 people in every department are willing to go demonstrate success, and then other departments want to replicate that because they see what good happens when we have this success. And so you're right, it's a bit of a challenge, but there are always people that are motivated. Let's mobilize them, and let's inspire everyone. Let's remind them why we're here. We're here to help our students have a better life, and we know when they're successful, our economy and our country is successful, so let's work together. So that's been my approach to that problem. One of the things we can do to make sure things happen is to ask these relevant questions. So ask every program as part of the chair, report to the dean, etc. What progress have you made on these key performance indicators? How many experiential education programs have you got? And very quickly, when they realize that these are the priorities of the institution and that we're moving forward and that they're going to be held to account, what gets measured gets done. And then the last question about faculty outside and engagement, I always think of this as the coalition of the willing. So anyone who is interested in assisting is invited in. If they can demonstrate they can add value, they'll be an important part of a team. Part of this is a period of discovery. We don't know where all our alumni are. We don't even understand our industries sometimes because in law, it may be a direct link to legal firms. In medicine, it may be very obvious, but where does a philosopher go? Where does an English graduate go? And so we sometimes have to think creatively of what industry is for those graduates and then start to be more welcoming so that those opportunities are captured.
We good on time? Okay. Thank you very much. And I'd invite all of our colleagues here. We've still got Abigail and Peter. As we wrap up, they'll be around to have further conversations. I think the discussion about how do you infuse employability into your curriculum, into the practices of teaching and learning is one that is left open, but I think it's an important one for us to continue to engage on. So thank you very much for your insights and sharing your perspectives, especially from Ashesi who are on the ground and living it. So really appreciate it. I'll turn it back to Aman now to close for us.
Thank you so much, Suki. So we are about ending our program now. I think we usually get the chair to give a closing remark, so I'll give 1 minute to Professor Mevi to give us his final remarks.
Thank you very much. So soon we come to the end of this program. I must say that we learned a lot of things, and I've kept a few notes here. I just want to share with you so that we can think together. Number one, I remember what the gentleman from GTech told us about the welding. You have to pick it up. We can't be in this country and we don't have welders, for the oil and gas industry. Something can be done about that. Somebody should look at that seriously. in mechanical engineering. I want to emphasize on the strength of the active alumni network. Last time we inaugurated our new alumni and then we gave them a lot of mandate. Please, let's strengthen the link there. Let's see what best they can do for us. I think Peter re-emphasized the need for short courses and how it solved the problem we are facing in the market, especially with the fast-changing industry. Please pick it up and let's see how best we can do that. It has become very obvious that the program advisory committee is needed in almost all departments. It's so obvious. Begin to look at people among your own alumni, those who are from associations and from different parties, and begin to create. And this is the job we are giving right now to our head of department. Head of department, you have to think deep about that. You have to go beyond the boss to get the people on board, and then let's together come. Maybe next time we are here, we are inaugurating 20, who knows? Yes. I think I like the idea about the coaching from the retirees. Let's get them on board to see whether they can provide us with guest lectures. I met one person from VRA who was traveling just to United States to go and teach in the University of Delaware because he's here, he has served more than 30 years in the industry. He's not a PhD holder, and the law perhaps in some of our universities doesn't allow him to come and even deliver a guest lecture. I think our law is no more like that. Now you have to go ahead and pick people like this to come and share their experience with us so that our students learn exactly what is happening on the market. I would like to thank Abigail a lot for the experiential learning internship, the employer forum, the corporate councils, and many of the initiatives they have at Ashesi University. Somebody asked the question, between the private and the public setup, there are a few differences, but there are a lot of experiences to emulate. And I think we have taken note of most of them. We shall sit down around the table and see which best fit our university and how we can implement some of them. Thank you very much. The last one I would like to emphasize on is the issue of branding. And I think it goes in line with the second issue on intellectual property that Peter talked about. Let's look at that. If now you give incentives to people directly because they have been able to develop products, now you are commercializing. I think it pushes the people to do their best. And again, it gives name to the university. Let's begin to broadcast the good things we are doing. I always look at what happened every year after our project defense. People in mechanical, electrical, science, they design so many innovative things, but nobody hears what is happening here. Let's begin to speak loud. Let's begin to appreciate our own, and then we can build the brand gradually. So I think there are a lot
good and fine with us. In Jesus' name we pray with thanksgiving. Amen.
Thank you.
Thank you. So for our online participants, we have an evaluation form. If you are here and you've not filled your evaluation form, please do that before you leave. For online participants, please leave your email address on the chat. We will share with you the evaluation form. Thank you, everyone. I'm interested by what?